My sister got a shiny $90,000 BMW X7 for Christmas with an oversized silver bow. I got a $12 keychain. Mom smiled and said, "Be grateful. Life is fair." Around 3 a.m., I left my surprise and walked out. The next 7 a.m. morning, Mom lost her mind. My sister, Olivia, always had a talent for arriving late to every family event and still becoming the center of attention the moment she walked through the door. That Christmas morning was no different. The house smelled of cinnamon rolls and pine needles, lights blinking softly around the tree while Mom hummed in the kitchen. I had woken up early with a quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, this year things would feel a little more balanced. Then the front door burst open, and Olivia floated inside wearing a sparkling white coat and perfect curls. Before she could even take off her gloves, Mom grabbed her hand excitedly. "Come outside, sweetheart. There's something special waiting." I followed them out into the crisp winter air. Sitting in the driveway was a shiny $90,000 BMW X7 wrapped with an oversized silver bow, the kind of scene you'd expect in a luxury commercial. Olivia gasped dramatically, clutched her chest, and squealed while Mom's face glowed with pride. I stood there holding the small box she had placed in my hands earlier. Inside was a cheap $12 keychain with my initials, the kind of last-minute purchase you toss on the counter when you feel guilty leaving with nothing. Mom saw my expression and gave a soft, almost rehearsed smile. "Be grateful," she said gently. "Life is fair." The words sank into me like cold water. The day passed in a blur of Olivia taking selfies with her new car, revving the engine for her followers, and Mom fluttering around her like she was made of glass. I did the dishes, cleaned up wrapping paper, and tried to stay out of the way. No one noticed. Late that night, long after the house had gone quiet, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Mom's words, "Life is fair," echoed over and over, hollow and mocking. Every memory of unequal birthdays, school events she'd forgotten to attend, excuses made for Olivia's needs but never mine, everything pressed at me until I felt something inside me finally snap. Around 3 a.m. I slipped out of bed and walked to the garage. The BMW stood there gleaming beneath the faint light, flawless and expensive. My reflection looked distorted on the smooth paint. I placed the keychain gently on the windshield, then pulled out a folded note I had written earlier with trembling hands. I tucked it beneath the wiper blade, turned off the light, and walked out into the cold night with nothing but the clothes I was wearing. By 7 a.m., Mom's scream echoed down the street. She had found the note. Olivia later told me she had never seen Mom so frantic, pacing in circles, reading the same lines again and again with shaking hands. My note said, "I'm done being invisible. I'm done pretending everything is equal. I'm not angry, I'm just done. Please don't look for me." While they were panicking, I was already miles away, walking toward the bus station with my breath forming clouds in the freezing air. I bought a ticket to a small coastal town I once visited on a school trip. There, I rented a tiny room above a bakery and took a dishwashing job. For the first time in years, I slept without feeling like a shadow. Messages from Mom and Olivia poured in, apologies, promises to change, photos of tear-streaked faces. I ignored them. I wasn't ready. Months passed. Then one rainy Thursday, an envelope arrived at the bakery with no return address. Inside was the same $12 keychain, now scratched and worn, and a single handwritten note from Mom. "I'm learning. I hope one day you'll let me show you." I held the keychain for a long time before slipping it into my pocket, not out of forgiveness, but as a reminder of who I once was, and of the person I was slowly becoming. Life still wasn't fair, but for the first time, it was mine to shape. That coastal town became my refuge far longer than I expected. Weeks blurred into months, and the bakery's morning rhythm wove itself into my days, steam rising from bread ovens, the metallic clatter of trays, the quiet hum of early customers. I learned to enjoy silence, to savor anonymity, to understand who I was without being compared to Olivia every second of my life. But healing is never a straight path. Some nights, Loneliness crept in like a cold draft under the door. I would lie awake listening to the ocean waves and wonder if I had gone too far. Other nights, I felt lighter than air, relieved to be living a life that was finally mine. Then came the envelope. The keychain. The note. Mom's handwriting. I kept them both in the inside pocket of my jacket, close to my chest. Not as forgiveness, no, that was still far away, but as something like a compass. A reminder that running had been necessary, but staying gone forever might not be. About 3 weeks after receiving the envelope, I got a call from the bakery owner, Mr. Harland, asking me to come downstairs early. I assumed we had a delivery coming in. What I didn't expect was to walk into the shop and freeze mid-step. Olivia was sitting at one of the corner tables. Her hair wasn't curled or perfect. She wasn't wearing her expensive white coat. She looked tired, exhausted, actually, in a way I had never seen before. When she noticed me, she stood up slowly, like she was afraid I might bolt. "Hi," she said softly. I didn't respond. Couldn't. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked at the corner. Somehow that detail struck me harder than anything else. Olivia never let anything imperfect remain in her life. "I've been looking for you," she murmured. "Mom, too." But I asked her to let me come alone. I still didn't speak, so she continued, voice trembling. "You were right. You were always right. And we didn't see it. Or we didn't want to." She swallowed hard. "The morning you left." Mom completely broke. She kept repeating the same thing. "I thought they were fine. I thought they understood. She didn't realize she made you understand too much." I sat down across from her, not trusting my legs to keep me standing. Olivia wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater. "I didn't come to drag you home. I didn't come to make you forgive us. I needed to say I'm sorry. Really sorry. You deserved everything I got. And more." Silence draped over the table. Heavy. Real. Finally I spoke. "Why now?" She looked down at her hands. "Because getting everything doesn't mean anything when the person who deserved it too is gone." For the first time in years, I saw Olivia not as the shining favorite, but as someone who was just as lost in that house as I had been, only in a different way. We talked for hours in the bakery, long after the first wave of customers came and went. When the sky turned soft and gold outside, Olivia stood, slinging her worn-out bag over her shoulder. "I won't pressure you," she said at the door. "Just know, you're not alone anymore. Not if you don't want to be." And then she walked out. I stood there long after she left, unsure where the path ahead would lead. Back home? Somewhere new? Or maybe somewhere in between? For the first time, the choice felt entirely mine. The days after Olivia's visit felt different, heavier, brighter, confusing in ways I hadn't expected. I kept replaying our conversation in my mind, her cracked phone screen, the way her voice shook, the honesty in her eyes. For years I had imagined confronting my family, but never like that. Never with sincerity instead of excuses. I tried to return to my routine, but the rhythm had shifted. The bakery felt smaller. My room above it felt quieter. The ocean sounded louder at night, as if urging me to make a choice I wasn't ready for. One evening, just after closing, Mr. Harland walked in from the back room holding a tray of cooling pastries. He set them down, gave me a long look, and said, "You know, people don't show up like that unless something in them has changed." I blinked. He rarely spoke about anything personal unless it was about bread dough or oven temperatures. "I'm not saying go back," he continued. "But maybe don't close the door completely. That's all." His words settled into me like warm coffee on a cold morning. A week passed. Then another. Olivia texted me once, not a plea, not guilt, just a simple, "Hope you're eating well. It's freezing here. Wear extra layers." I didn't answer, but I didn't delete it either. Then, one quiet morning, as I was wiping down the counters, the bakery door chimed. I turned, expecting a customer. Instead, I froze. Mom stood there. She looked smaller than I remembered. The confident tilt in her shoulders was gone. Her hair was pulled back sloppily, and her eyes were swollen, rimmed with days of crying or nights of no sleep. Maybe both. She didn't speak at first. She just stood there, gripping her purse strap like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Finally, she whispered, "Can I sit?" I nodded slowly. She moved to the table Olivia had sat at weeks earlier, as if drawn to the spot. I approached cautiously, every part of me tense, guarded. Mom looked down at her hands. "I didn't come here to make excuses," she said softly. "I came because I need to understand. I need to hear it from you. Not from Olivia. Not from what I think. From you." Her voice cracked. "What did I do wrong?" The question stunned me. For so long, I had imagined yelling at her, listing every slight, every moment she chose Olivia over me. But sitting in front of her now, seeing just how fragile she looked, the anger didn't rise the way I expected. Instead, something heavier did. Something older. "You didn't see me," I said quietly. Her eyes lifted, wet. "I thought that I understood?" I cut in gently. "That I didn't need as much? That I was fine being second?" Mom flinched, like each sentence was a bruise forming beneath her ribs. "I loved you both," she whispered. "I never doubted that," I said. "But love isn't the same as fairness." A tear slid down her cheek. "You're right," she said. "You're absolutely right. And I don't know how I missed it. How I didn't see how lonely you were. How much you carried. I thought I was doing what was best, giving Olivia what she needed." She shook her head. "But I didn't ask what you needed." Silence wrapped around us, not hostile, but raw and trembling. Then she reached into her purse and set something on the table. It was a small, folded paper. "My note. I've read this every night," she whispered. "Every night. I thought I had lost you forever." I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. "I'm not here to pull you home," she continued. "I'm not here to demand forgiveness. I want to learn how to do better. Even if it takes years. Even if the best I get is a text from you once in a while. I will take that. Gladly." I sat down slowly, feeling the weight of the moment anchor me in place. "Mom," I said quietly, "I'm not ready to come back." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. She didn't beg. Didn't pressure. "I understand," she whispered. "But," I continued, surprising even myself, "I'm not done with you either." Her breath hitched. Then she covered her mouth as more tears fell, relief, heartbreak, hope blending together. We sat like that for a long time, two people learning each other for the first time, finally seeing the invisible spaces between us. And for the first time since I left home, it felt like maybe healing wasn't impossible after all. Mom and I stayed in the bakery until the sky outside turned a soft gray, the kind that hints at rain but doesn't quite commit. She kept wiping her eyes, embarrassed, but I didn't rush her. For the first time in my life, we were speaking honestly, not around our pain, not through forced smiles, but directly, quietly, vulnerably. When she finally stood to leave, she hesitated near the door. "I'll be in town for a few days," she said softly. "I'm not asking for your time. But if you feel like talking again, I'll be here." She gave a small, unsure smile and walked out. The bell above the door chimed once, and then the bakery felt impossibly still. I didn't follow her. And I didn't run upstairs either. I just stood there with my hands braced on the counter, trying to steady my breathing. Seeing her like that, unpolished, undone, had cracked something open inside me. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something warmer than anger. Something like possibility. For the rest of the day, I worked on autopilot. My mind kept drifting back to her trembling voice, her apology, her promise. The mom I saw today was not the woman I grew up with. Or maybe she was, and I had been too hurt to notice. Or maybe pain changes people, and losing me, even just for a while, had shaken something loose inside her. That night, after closing, I walked down to the pier. The wooden boards creaked under my feet, the waves whispering against the stilts below. The salty wind tugged at my jacket. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was running from them or from myself. I stood there for almost an hour before I noticed someone approaching. Quiet footsteps. A familiar outline. Olivia. She had on a thick scarf and a wool coat, her breath forming pale clouds in the cold air. She stopped a few feet beside me, leaning on the railing, staring out at the dark horizon. "I didn't tell Mom where you worked," she said gently. "She figured it out on her own. I hope that's okay." "It's okay," I said, surprising myself. We stood there in silence. Not tense. Not awkward. Just there. Together. After a while, she spoke again, her voice small. "She told me you talked today." "Yeah." "And?" Olivia asked, not pushing, but hoping. "And it didn't hurt as much as I thought it would." She let out a shaky breath. "Good. That's good." A wave crashed harder than the others, spraying mist up toward us. Olivia shivered, wrapping her arms around herself, and then said something I did not expect. "You know, I envied you." I turned sharply. "What?" She kept her eyes on the water. "You always seemed so strong. You didn't need attention, or praise, or everything handed to you. You just lived." I felt like I had to perform to be worth anything. I blinked. Hard. She continued, her voice cracking. "Mom didn't mean to make me the favorite. She just thought I needed more. And I let her think that. I leaned into it. I loved the attention because I didn't know who I was without it." She swallowed. "But it hurt you. I know that. And I'm so sorry." It hit me then, Olivia wasn't perfect. She wasn't the golden child. She was just a different kind of lost. We both were. The wind blew a strand of hair across her face. She tucked it behind her ear and finally looked at me. "Can we try again?" she asked. "Not as sisters who grew up in that house. Just as people. As adults. Starting over?" I looked out at the dark ocean again, the waves rolling in steady, patient rhythms. "Yeah," I said quietly. "We can try." Olivia's breath caught, and she let out a soft, relieved laugh. We stayed there until the pier lights flickered on, painting our shadows long across the wooden planks. Not fixed. Not healed. But starting something new. When we finally turned to leave, she asked gently, "Are you coming back with us after all this?" I shook my head. "Not yet." And she nodded, no disappointment, no guilt, just understanding. "Then we'll come to you," she said with a small smile. "As often as you'll let us." For the first time, her words didn't feel like a demand or a trap. They felt like a promise. A promise that the past didn't have to define us. That maybe, just maybe, family could be rebuilt, not from guilt or obligation, but from choice. Over the next few days, the town seemed to breathe differently around me. Maybe nothing had changed on the outside, the same salty wind, the same clatter of the bakery in the morning, the same familiar faces buying their usual pastries, but I had changed. Something inside me had shifted, like a locked door quietly opening. Mom stayed in a small inn near the harbor. I didn't visit her right away, but I didn't avoid the area either. Sometimes I would catch a glimpse of her walking along the waterfront, hands tucked into her sleeves, looking out at the sea with a mixture of hope and regret. She never approached me when she saw me from a distance. She gave me space, something she had rarely done before. Olivia stayed 2 more days. She didn't push either. She wandered the town, blending in awkwardly among the fishermen and shop owners, occasionally popping into the bakery just to sit quietly at a table while I worked. Each time she left, she gave me a small wave, subtle, careful, as if afraid to break whatever fragile new thread tied us together. And that thread grew stronger. One evening, after finishing my shift, I returned to my tiny room above the bakery and found a note slipped under my door. Small, folded, simple. Tea at the harbor? If you're up for it. Mom. Just that. No pressure. No guilt. I stared at the paper for a long moment before setting it on my bedside table. I didn't go that night. But the next morning, I found myself walking toward the harbor anyway. Mom was sitting at a picnic table, a thermos in front of her, her hands wrapped around a mug. She looked up when she heard my footsteps, not with relief or desperation, just quiet gratitude. I didn't know if you'd come, she said. I didn't either, I admitted. She poured me tea without asking, gently pushing the steaming cup toward me. For a while, we just sat like that, listening to gulls and waves and the distant hum of boat engines. It wasn't peaceful, not exactly, but it wasn't painful either. Finally, Mom exhaled shakily. I went to therapy, she said. After you left. That stunned me more than anything else she'd said before. I realized too late how much I misunderstood what you needed. I kept telling myself you were strong and independent so I wouldn't have to admit I wasn't giving you enough. She looked down. It was easier to think you were fine than to face the fact that I had failed one of my children. I didn't know what to say. The wind tugged at my jacket, and the steam from my mug curled into the cold air. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet, Mom said softly. Just the chance to keep trying. I nodded slowly. Trying is enough. For now. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She just reached across the table, hesitantly, and placed her hand palm up, not touching me, offering instead of taking. For the first time, I placed my hand in hers. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't an ending. But it was a beginning. We met for tea again the next day. And the day after that. We talked about small things at first, the weather, the bakery, the town. But soon the conversations shifted. We talked about my childhood, about the moments I had buried for so long, the ways I had felt small, overshadowed, overlooked. Mom didn't defend herself. She listened. Really listened. And sometimes she cried quietly while I spoke, understanding piece by piece the weight I had carried alone. A week later, when Olivia returned, this time with an overnight bag and none of her usual dramatic flair, she joined us for one of those tea mornings. She sat between us, absorbing every word, offering her own truths, her own apologies, her own memories of being stuck in a role she never fully understood. For the first time in my life, the three of us spoke like equals, not performing, not competing, not pretending. Just three flawed people trying to build something new. One evening, as the sun set in streaks of orange and purple across the water, Olivia asked gently, "So, what now? Are you going to stay here forever?" I smiled a little. "Maybe not forever. But for now? Yes." Mom exhaled, a mixture of sadness and acceptance. "We'll visit," she said. "If you want us to." "I do," I said. "But slowly." "Slow is good," Mom whispered. "Slow lets things grow right." After they left that night, I stood at the edge of the pier again, hands in my pockets, the familiar weight of the scratched $12 keychain resting against my palm. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was running from home. I felt like I was building one. Not the one I came from. The one I chose. A few months passed, and the balance between us finally felt natural. Mom and Olivia visited occasionally, no expectations, no pressure, just quiet moments together. We drank tea by the harbor, walked the narrow streets of the town, and laughed about things we had never talked about before. The past didn't disappear, but it no longer controlled us. I stayed in the coastal town, found a better job, and rented a small apartment near the water. My life became calm, steady, mine. One evening, sitting on the sand and listening to the waves, I took out the scratched $12 keychain and held it in my palm. It no longer reminded me of being overlooked. It reminded me of how far we had come. And for the first time, I felt at peace, with them, and with myself. The story didn't end perfectly. It ended honestly. And that was enough.